The great hall of the Zephyrian Council was filled with panic. Admiral Veltar's bug-like hands shook as he stared at the floating display screen in front of him. Red dots covered the image of their home planet. Each red dot was an enemy ship. There were thousands of them. "How many ships do we have left?" Veltar asked. His voice was quiet, but everyone in the room could hear the fear in it. Commander Kessari looked at her data tablet. Her blue shell, which was normally bright and clean, now looked dull and dirty. She had not slept in 3 days. 12 ships. Admiral, that is all. 12 ships. Against thousands. The enemy had been attacking for weeks. They called themselves the Void Swarm. They came from deep space, from the dark places between the stars. They destroyed everything they touched. They turned living things into more ships, more weapons, more hunger. The Zephyrians were an old race. They had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had seen wars before. They had fought enemies before. But nothing like this. The Void Swarm did not want land or resources or power. They just wanted to eat everything alive. "What about the other colonies?" asked Council Member Thylon. He was older than the others, with gray marks on his shell that showed his age. "Gone," Kessari said. "All of them. 17 worlds in the past year. Billions of our people." Her voice broke a little when she said the number. The room became very quiet. Outside, they could hear the sound of explosions. The Void Swarm was bombing their capital city. Soon they would land their troops. Soon everything would be over. "Our weapons do not work," Admiral Veltar said. "We have tried everything. Plasma cannons, missile attacks, energy beams. Nothing stops them. Their ships learn from every attack. They adapt. They become stronger." "What about calling for help?" asked another council member. Veltar made a bitter sound. "Help from who? The Void Swarm has eaten every nearby civilization. The far colonies cannot send help in time. We are alone." The explosions outside got louder. Through the windows, they could see fires burning in the city. People were running in the streets. Parents carried their children. Everyone was trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Thylon stood up slowly. He was the keeper of their old records, the ancient stories and forgotten knowledge. "There might be one way," he said. Everyone looked at him. "What way?" Veltar asked. "The summoning protocol," Thylon said. The room became even quieter than before. Several council members made religious signs with their hands. The summoning protocol was forbidden knowledge. It had been banned for 10,000 years. "You cannot be serious," Kessari said. "I am very serious," Thylon replied. He walked to the center of the room. "Our ancestors used it when they faced extinction. It is a way to call the apex predators. The apex predators are myths," another council member said. "Are they?" Thylon asked. He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A new image appeared in the air. It showed a star map with a red circle around one small yellow star. "This is the quarantine zone. The Galactic Concordat has kept this system locked away for 10,000 years. Why would they do that for myths?" Veltar stared at the map. He knew about the quarantine zone. Every spacefaring race knew about it, but nobody talked about what was inside it. "What is in there?" he asked. "Humans," Thylon said. "The stories say they come from a death world. A planet so dangerous that every living thing there had to become a killer just to survive. They fought each other for millions of years. They turned war into an art form. They made weapons out of everything. Even their plants and animals are deadly." "Why were they quarantined?" Kessari asked. "Because every time they met another species, they either saved them or destroyed them, sometimes both. The galaxy could not decide if they were saviors or monsters, so they locked them away." The building shook again. This time, pieces of the ceiling fell down. The Void Swarm was getting closer. "The humans fought something like the Void Swarm before," Thylon continued. "In the old records, there are stories about humans fighting an enemy they called The hierarchy. Ships that adapted to every weapon. Creatures that consumed other species. The descriptions match the Void Swarm exactly. And the humans won? Veltar asked. The humans did more than win. They turned the enemy's strength against them. They made the adaptation process destroy the enemy, instead of helping them. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights in the room flickered. How does the summoning protocol work? Veltar asked. Thylon looked around the room at each council member. We send a message across space using quantum entanglement. We offer something humans want in exchange for help. According to the records, humans are always interested in learning about new enemies. And if they say no, then we die as we would have anyway. And if they say yes? Thylon was quiet for a moment. Then we find out why the galaxy was so afraid of them. Outside, the bombing stopped. In the sudden quiet, they could hear a new sound. Landing ships. The Void Swarm was coming down to the surface. We have maybe 1 hour before they reach us, Kesari said, looking at her scanner. Admiral Veltar looked around the room at his people. They were scared. They were desperate. They were about to die. He thought about all the Zephyrian children in the shelters below. He thought about their cities, their art, their music, their 10,000 years of history. All of it would be gone soon. Do it, he said. Admiral? Thylon asked, wanting to be sure. Activate the summoning protocol. Call the humans. If we are going to die, let us at least try something that has never been tried. Thylon nodded. We will need to go to the ritual chamber. The equipment is there. Then let us go, Veltar said. Let us summon the one thing the galaxy fears most. As they left the Great Hall, none of them looked back. Behind them, the windows glowed orange with fire. Above them, the Void Swarm ships blotted out the stars. They walked toward the ritual chamber, toward their last hope, toward the unknown. They walked toward humanity. The ritual chamber was deep underground, beneath the oldest part of the capital city. The walls were covered with strange symbols that glowed with blue light. The symbols were older than their space empire, older than their written history. They came from a time when the Zephyrians were still learning to use fire. Admiral Veltar followed Thylon down the stone steps. Behind them came Commander Kesari and 3 other council members. Above them, the city was dying. They could feel the explosions through the rock. How long since this chamber was used? Veltar asked. 5,000 years. Thylon answered. The last time, our people called for help against the Crystal Plague. The help came, but the price was very high. What was the price? Thylon did not answer. He was busy working with an ancient machine in the center of the room. The machine was made of crystal and metal that did not match anything in their modern technology. It hummed with power. I do not understand how this works, Kesari said. She was studying the symbols on the walls. These writings are from before we had space travel. How could our ancestors contact beings from other stars? Some knowledge was lost and then found again, Thylon said. Our ancestors knew things we forgot. They could reach across space without ships. They could touch minds that were light years away. Our Tom Southers says it unstay. Our Tom South, the machine in the center began to glow brighter. Strange patterns of energy danced across its surface. What exactly will we tell the humans? Veltar asked. The truth, Thylon said. We are dying. We have an enemy that adapts to all weapons. We offer knowledge about this enemy in exchange for help. Humans are said to be curious about threats. They study danger the way we study art. And if they think we are lying, then they will not come. The machine made a low, singing sound. The symbols on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with it. It is ready, Thylon said. Admiral, you must speak the message. You are our leader. Your voice carries the authority. Veltar stepped up to the machine. He placed his hands on 2 metal plates. The metal was cold, but it began to warm under his touch. What do I say? He asked. Speak from your heart. Tell them what they need to know. Veltar closed his eyes. He thought about his dying world above. He thought about the Void Swarm ships covering the sky like a dark cloud. He thought about all the people counting on him to save them. Unknown humans. He began. His voice echoed strangely in the chamber. My name is Admiral Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic. Our world is dying. We face an enemy we cannot defeat. They call themselves the Void Swarm. They adapt to all our weapons. They consume all living things. They have destroyed 17 civilizations. The machine's glow became brighter. Energy crackled between the crystal pieces. We believe you have fought this enemy before. In your records, they may be called the Hierarchy. We offer all our knowledge about their current tactics. In exchange for help, we are desperate. We have nowhere else to turn. Please help us. The energy reached a peak, then suddenly stopped. The chamber became quiet. The symbols on the walls dimmed. Did it work? Kesari asked. I do not know, Thylon admitted. Now we wait. Far across the galaxy, Captain Sarah Chen was reviewing reports on the bridge of the UES Defiance. The human ship was patrol near the edge of their territory, watching for signs of hierarchy activity. The war with the hierarchy had been going on for 200 years. It was a slow, careful war. The hierarchy learned from every battle, so humans had to be very smart about when and how they fought. Lieutenant Marcus Webb looked up from his station. Captain, we're getting a weird signal. Define weird, Chen said. It's using pre-warp physics, but somehow it's reaching us across half the galaxy instantly. That should be impossible. Chen walked over to Webb's station. Let me hear it. The message played. The voice was strange, alien, but the words were clear. Chen listened with growing interest. Play it again, she said. Webb played the message 2 more times. Chen's face became very serious. Ma'am? Webb asked. Contact Admiral Harrison, Chen said. Tell him we have a Code 7 situation. Code 7 was the designation for hierarchy activity in an unknown sector. It was one of the highest priority alerts in the human military. Captain, said Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's science officer. The description of this void swarm matches hierarchy tactics exactly. Adaptive hulls, conversion of organic matter, swarming behavior. It has to be them. Chen nodded. That's what I was thinking. Which means these Zephyrians are fighting our oldest enemy. She turned to her communications officer. Can we trace that signal back to its source? Yes. Captain, it came from a system about 400 light-years from here. The Sigma Draconis sector. How long to get there? 3 days at maximum jump speed. Chen thought about this. Going to help aliens was against protocol. Humans were supposed to stay in their own territory. But if the hierarchy was operating in a new sector, that changed everything. Ma'am, Webb said, what are your orders? Chen made her decision. Set course for Sigma Draconis. Maximum speed. Captain, shouldn't we wait for orders from command? Dr. Park asked. The hierarchy doesn't wait, Chen replied. And neither do we. If they're out there eating civilizations, we need to stop them. The Defiance turned and jumped toward the distant star system. As they traveled through hyperspace, Chen studied what little they knew about the Zephyrians. They seemed to be an old, peaceful race. They had no experience fighting an enemy like the hierarchy. 3 days later, the Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Space was black with enemy ships. Thousands of hierarchy vessels surrounded a blue-green planet. The planet's surface was covered with fires. Dear God, Webb whispered. Scan for Zephyrian ships, Chen ordered. I count 12 vessels, Captain. They're hiding behind the planet's larger moon. And hierarchy ships? Over 3,000. Chen stared at the display. It was the largest hierarchy force she had ever seen, but something was wrong. These ships looked different from the ones they usually fought. The hull configurations were older, more primitive. Dr. Park analyzed those ship designs. Park worked at her station for several minutes. Captain, these are Generation 4 hierarchy ships. We haven't seen designs like these for 50 years. 50 years? Chen said. You mean these are older models? Much older. The adaptive technology is at least 2 generations behind what we've been fighting. Chen smiled grimly. The Zephyrians had summoned humans to fight their greatest enemy. They didn't know that humanity had been fighting this enemy for centuries. They didn't know that what seemed impossible to them was just another day at work for humans. Open a channel to the planet, Chen ordered. Channel open, Captain. Zephyrian vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen, of the United Earth ship Defiance. We received your distress call. Hold your positions, we're coming to help. There was a long pause. Then a weak, desperate voice came through the speakers. Human ship, this is Admiral Veltar. Please. Our world is dying. Can you really help us? Chen looked at the massive enemy force on her display. 3,000 ships against 1 human vessel. Any sane person would run. But humans had stopped being sane a long time ago. Admiral Veltar, Chen said, we've been fighting the hierarchy for 200 years. What you call the Void Swarm, we call Tuesday. The first thing Admiral Veltar noticed about the human ship was how it moved. The Defiance did not fly through space like normal ships. It hunted. It moved from shadow to shadow, using the planet's moons and asteroid fields to hide. When it attacked the Void Swarm ships, it struck fast and hard, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. How are they doing that? Commander Kesari asked. She was watching the human ship destroy 3 swarm vessels in less than 2 minutes. I do not know, Veltar admitted. Their weapons cut through swarm hulls like they are made of paper. On their screens, they watched the human ship fire strange beams of energy. The beams did not look powerful, but they burned through the adaptive hulls that had stopped every Zephyrian weapon. Admiral, the communications officer said, the human captain is requesting permission to come aboard. Veltar felt his blood turn cold. The humans wanted to board their ship. He had summoned the most feared species in the galaxy, and now they were coming to see him face to face. Should we let them? Kesari asked. We asked for their help, Veltar said. Yes, Admiral. A few minutes later, 2 shapes materialized in the transport bay. The Zephyrians, who saw them first, ran away in terror. The humans were tall, much taller than Zephyrians. They wore black armor that made them look like metal demons. Their faces were hidden behind dark visors. When they moved, the armor made no sound at all. Captain Chen removed her helmet as she walked into the command center. Veltar got his first look at a human face. It was smooth and pale, with strange fur growing from the top of her head. Her eyes were small and dark, like a predator's eyes. When she smiled, Veltar saw white teeth that looked very sharp. Admiral Veltar, Chen said. Her voice was calm and confident. I'm Captain Sarah Chen. This is Sergeant Maria Santos, my combat engineer. Santos removed her helmet too. Her face was darker than Chen's, and she had scars on her cheek that looked like claw marks. She was chewing something that smelled strange. Thank you for coming, Veltar said. But I must ask, how can 1 ship help us against 3,000 enemy vessels? Chen walked to the tactical display. She studied the positions of the swarm ships with the same calm interest that Veltar might study a piece of art. Tell me about their adaptive hulls, she said. They learn from every weapon we use, Kesari explained. After the first few attacks, our plasma cannons become useless. Our missiles cannot penetrate their shields. Every defense adapts to stop our attacks. Santos laughed. It was a sound that made every Zephyrian in the room want to hide. Gen 4 adaptive matrices, she said to Chen. These guys are fighting tech. That's 50 years out of date. 50 years? Veltar asked. The hierarchy kept upgrading their systems, Chen explained. We've been fighting Generation 12 adaptive hulls for the past decade. What you're dealing with here is ancient technology. Santos pulled a small device from her belt. It looked like a simple metal cylinder. But when she activated it, the room filled with energy that made the hair on Veltar's arms stand up. Watch this, Santos said. She held the device near a piece of swarm hull material that the Zephyrians had collected for study. The metal cylinder fired a beam of energy that was barely visible. The swarm hull material, which had resisted every Zephyrian weapon, simply disappeared. There was no explosion, no heat. It just stopped existing. The room became very quiet. What was that? Veltar asked. Standard anti-hierarchy plasma torch, Santos said. Every human soldier carries one. We use them to cut through bulkheads during boarding actions. How is it possible? Kesari demanded. That hull material adapted to resist plasma energy. It should be immune. Chen smiled again. That predator smile that made Veltar's survival instincts scream warnings. It adapted to resist the kind of plasma energy you were using, she said. Our plasma is different. We learned a long time ago that if the enemy adapts to one type of weapon, you use a different type. But they will adapt to your weapons too, Veltar protested. Sure, Santos said. So we'll switch to something else. We've got about 200 different ways to kill hierarchy ships. By the time they adapt to all of them, we'll have invented new ones. Dr. Park, who had beamed down with the others, was scanning the Zephyrian computers. Captain, I'm reading their battle records. The hierarchy has been using the same tactics here that they used against us 50 years ago. They haven't evolved at all. Chen nodded. That makes sense. These ships are probably an isolated group. They've been out here eating peaceful civilizations for decades. Never facing any real opposition, they've had no reason to improve. Real opposition? Veltar asked. Chen looked at him with those dark predator eyes. Admiral, let me ask you something. When your people fight wars, what is your goal? To win with the least loss of life possible, Veltar said. To protect our civilians. To make peace as quickly as we can. Noble goals, Chen said. But that's not how humans fight. When we go to war, we have only one goal. To make sure the enemy never threatens anyone ever again. Santos was examining a tactical display that showed swarm attack patterns. These guys are sloppy, she told Chen. Look at their formation spacing. They're vulnerable to cascade detonation. What is cascade detonation? Kesari asked. You blow up one ship in just the right way, Santos explained, and the explosion sets off the ships next to it. Those explosions set off more ships. Pretty soon, you've destroyed a whole fleet with one shot. That is impossible, Veltar said. Is it? Chen asked. She turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Webb. Show them the Cygnus battle. A holographic display appeared in the air. It showed a human fleet facing a much larger hierarchy force. The humans were outnumbered 10-1. Veltar watched as a single human torpedo somehow destroyed over 50 enemy ships in a chain reaction. How? He whispered. Physics, Santos said. Every ship has weak points. Every formation has flaws. Humans are very good at finding weak points. Chen studied the display showing the current battle. The hierarchy ships around your planet are using a standard consumption formation. They're positioned to convert your biomass into new ships as efficiently as possible. Can you stop them? Veltar asked. Stop them? Chen said. Admiral, we're not here to stop them. We're here to teach them why the galaxy was afraid to let humans out of quarantine. She turned to Santos. How long do you need to prep the cascade charges? Give me 2 hours, Santos said. You have 1 hour, Chen replied. I want to finish this before they figure out we're here. What can we do to help? Veltar asked. Chen smiled that terrifying smile again. You can watch. And learn. Your species summoned humanity for help. You're about to see what that really means. Santos checked her weapons and equipment. Admiral, she said to Veltar, you might want to tell your people to stay away from the windows for the next few hours. Why? Kesari asked. Because, Santos said, humans fight differently than other species. We don't just win wars. We make art out of them. As the humans prepared to leave the ship, Chen turned back to Veltar one more time. Admiral, your people asked what we are. I'll tell you. We're the species that learned to hunt by being hunted. We're the civilization that turned war into science. We're what happens when evolution forgets to give a species natural weapons, so they make their own. She put her helmet back on. We're the thing that makes monsters check under their beds at night. The humans disappeared in a flash of transport light, leaving the Zephyrians alone with their fear and their hope. The attack began at dawn. Admiral Veltar watched from his ship's bridge as the human vessel Defiance moved through space like death itself. It did not charge into battle like a Zephyrian ship would. Instead, it danced around the edge of the swarm fleet, striking and vanishing, always staying just out of reach. "I do not understand their tactics," Commander Kesari said. "Why do they not engage the enemy directly?" "ADO. Because they are teaching the swarm the wrong lessons." Dr. Park's voice came through the communication system. She was still aboard the human ship, studying their methods. "Every time the Defiance attacks, it uses a different type of weapon. The swarm's hulls adapt to each attack, but they adapt in the wrong direction." On the tactical display, Veltar could see what she meant. The human ship would fire plasma beams at a group of swarm vessels. The ships would adapt their hulls to resist plasma. Then the Defiance would switch to kinetic projectiles, which tore through the plasma-resistant hulls like they were made of cloth. "It is like watching a master craftsman work," Thylon observed. "They are not just fighting. They are sculpting the battle." Meanwhile, aboard the Defiance, Captain Chen stood in the Combat Information Center, surrounded by displays showing every aspect of the battle. Her crew worked with calm efficiency, even though they were outnumbered 3,000 to 1. "Sergeant Santos, report," Chen said into her communicator. Santos's voice came back, slightly distorted by interference. "I'm aboard swarm vessel number 47, Captain. Their computer systems are even more primitive than we thought. I've uploaded the Cascade virus to their network." Santos was inside a swarm ship, moving through its corridors like a ghost. The swarm had no concept of individual boarding actions. Their entire species fought as a collective, so they had no defenses against a single human soldier appearing inside their ships. She planted small devices as she moved, each one designed to disrupt the swarm's adaptive systems. But the real weapon was information. Santos was feeding false data into the swarm's collective consciousness, teaching them to fear threats that did not exist while ignoring the real dangers. "How much longer do you need?" Chen asked. 5 more minutes, Santos replied. "These bugs really don't like visitors." Santos was not alone aboard the swarm ship. A group of Zephyrian engineers had volunteered to help her. Despite their terror, they followed her through the alien corridors, amazed at her casual attitude toward mortal danger. "How can you be so calm?" one of them asked as Santos casually disarmed a swarm defense turret with nothing but a small tool in her bare hands. "Because fear is a luxury," Santos said. "When you're fighting for survival, you don't have time to be scared." She led them to the ship's central processor, a massive organic computer that pulsed with sickly light. The Zephyrians stepped back in revulsion, but Santos approached it without hesitation. "Beautiful," she said, examining the alien technology. "Completely vulnerable to harmonic disruption, but beautiful." She placed a device against the organic computer. It began to emit a low, pulsing sound that seemed to match the computer's own rhythm. "What does that do?" the Zephyrian engineer asked. "It teaches the computer to doubt itself," Santos explained. "The swarm's greatest strength is that they all think together. But if you introduce uncertainty into their collective mind, they start making mistakes." Back on the Defiance, Lieutenant Webb was coordinating with the remaining Zephyrian fleet. "Admiral Veltar, we need you to position your ships here, here, and here," he said, marking positions on the tactical display. "Those positions will put us directly in the path of the swarm advance," Veltar protested. "Exactly," Webb said. "We need them to focus on you for the next 3 minutes. You want us to be bait? Trust us," Captain Chen said. "We know what we're doing." Veltar looked at his crew. They were all terrified, but they had come this far. "All ships, move to the positions the humans have marked. Hold your fire until they give the signal." The 12 Zephyrian ships moved into position. Immediately, over 300 swarm vessels turned toward them, sensing easy prey. "Now," Chen said quietly. Santos activated her device aboard the swarm ship. The harmonic pulse spread through the alien computer network, carrying the virus to every ship in the fleet. At the same time, the Defiance fired a single torpedo. The torpedo was not aimed at any of the swarm ships. Instead, it flew to an empty point in space between several enemy formations. "They missed," Kesari said. "No," Dr. Park said from the human ship. "Watch." The torpedo exploded, but not like any weapon the Zephyrians had ever seen. Instead of fire and shrapnel, it released a wave of energy that seemed to bend space itself. The swarm ships closest to the explosion began to malfunction. Their adaptive hulls, confused by the virus Santos had planted, tried to adapt to the energy wave. But they adapted too much. Too fast. Their hulls became so specialized that they could no longer function as spaceships. One by one, the swarm vessels began to tear themselves apart. Their own adaptive systems turned against them, trying to optimize for threats that did not exist. But the real masterstroke was still coming. "Dr. Park," Chen said, "transmit the navigation data." "What navigation data?" Veltar asked. "The locations of every hierarchy cell in the galaxy," Chen replied. "Information we've been gathering for 200 years. We're broadcasting it on all frequencies." Veltar did not understand at first. Then he saw what was happening on the long-range sensors. Other ships were appearing throughout the star system. Not human ships or Zephyrian ships, but ancient automated defense platforms. Ships that had been hidden for thousands of years, waiting. "What are those?" he asked. "The last gifts of the civilizations the hierarchy destroyed," Chen explained. "Before they died, many species built hidden defense systems. They've been waiting in dark space, programmed to activate if they ever detected hierarchy technology again. The ghost fleets of a dozen dead civilizations came alive. Ancient weapons, forgotten technologies, the final vengeance of extinct species. All of them had received the human transmission and awakened from their long sleep. The swarm found themselves facing not just one human ship, but the accumulated military might of everyone they had ever destroyed. "This is impossible," Kesari whispered, watching swarm ships explode by the hundreds. "How did you coordinate all of this?" "We didn't," Santos said. She had returned to the Zephyrian ship, covered in strange alien fluids but grinning broadly. "We just gave them the information they needed. The dead have been waiting a long time for revenge." Admiral Veltar watched the battle with growing amazement. The humans had not just defeated the swarm, they had turned the enemy's own tactics against them and awakened the fury of extinct civilizations. "Captain Chen," he said into the communicator, "how did you know this would work?" Chen's voice came back calm and confident. "Admiral, humans have been fighting the hierarchy for 2 centuries. We've learned that the best way to defeat an adaptive enemy is to give them too much to adapt to all at once. But the ghost fleets, how did you know they were there?" "We didn't," Chen admitted, "but we hoped they were. Every species fights differently, but everyone who faces extinction leaves something behind. We just gave them a reason to use it." The last of the swarm ships was destroyed by a weapon that fired beams of crystallized gravity. It had been built by a species whose name was lost to history, but whose hatred of the hierarchy burned as bright as a star. As the battle ended, Veltar realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans had not just saved his people, they had used his world as bait to draw the swarm into a trap that had been centuries in the making. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "did you plan this from the beginning?" There was a pause. Then Chen's voice came back, and Veltar could hear the smile in it. "Admiral, when humans go to war, we don't just fight the battle in front of us. We fight the war that's coming. We've been preparing for this day since we first encountered the hierarchy. You used us. We saved you," Chen corrected. "But yes, we used you too. That's what it means to fight like a human. We turn everything into a weapon. Even our own allies' desperation." The words should have made Veltar angry. Instead, he felt a strange sense of relief. His people had summoned the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and that species had done exactly what they were supposed to do. They had won. The space around Zephyrus Prime was filled with wreckage. Thousands of swarm ships floated dead in the void, their hulls twisted into impossible shapes by their own adaptive systems. The ancient ghost fleets had disappeared as mysteriously as they had come, vanishing back into dark space to wait for the next call to vengeance. Admiral Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable enemy fleet. His people were safe. Their world was saved. But he was not sure how to feel about what had happened. Captain Chen materialized on the bridge in a flash of transport light. She had removed her armor, and now wore a simple blue uniform that made her look almost normal. Almost. "Admiral," she said with a slight bow. "My compliments on your people's courage. Your engineers performed well during the boarding action." "They are still terrified of Sergeant Santos," Veltar admitted. Chen smiled. "Santos has that effect on people. She's been fighting the hierarchy since she was 16. War is the only language she speaks fluently." "And what language do you speak, Captain?" Chen looked out at the wreckage field. "Strategy. Logistics. The art of turning disasters into victories." She turned back to Veltar. "Your people did something very few species have ever attempted. You summoned help from the thing you feared most." "We were desperate," Veltar said. "Desperation makes people do impossible things." "True. But you could have chosen to die with dignity instead. You chose to live with uncertainty. That takes a different kind of courage." Thylon approached them, carrying a data tablet. "Captain Chen, I have been studying the recordings of the battle. There is something I do not understand." "What's that?" "The cascade weapon you used. The mathematics are incredible. How long did it take your people to develop such technology?" End quote. Chen was quiet for a moment. "We didn't develop it to fight the hierarchy," she said finally. "We developed it to fight ourselves." The Zephyrians stared at her. "Humans spent thousands of years at war with each other," Chen explained. "Every weapon we used against the hierarchy, we first used against other humans. We learned to think like predators, because we were prey to our own species for so long." "That is horrible," Commander Kesari said. "Yes," Chen agreed. "But it made us very good at survival. And eventually we learned something important. The same skills that make you dangerous to your enemies can make you valuable to your friends." Dr. Park approached the group, carrying a scanner. "Captain, I've finished analyzing the swarm ships. This was definitely a splinter group of the hierarchy. They've been isolated out here for decades, probably since before the main hierarchy forces upgraded their systems." "How many more splinter groups are there?" Veltar asked. "Unknown," Chen said. "The hierarchy spreads across the galaxy like a disease. When we defeat one group, 3 more appear somewhere else. They're not just an enemy. They're a condition, a test that every species has to pass." "What kind of test?" "The test of whether you're willing to do what it takes to survive. Most species fail. They fight with honor, follow rules, try to minimize casualties. All noble things. But the hierarchy doesn't care about honor." Santos appeared on the bridge, still carrying several alien weapons she had collected as souvenirs. "The hierarchy cares about one thing," she said. "Efficiency. They turn everything they touch into more of themselves. They're like a galactic cancer." "But you beat them," Thylon said. "We didn't beat them," Chen corrected. "We learned to fight them. There's a difference. Beating an enemy means the war is over. Learning to fight them means the war never has to be lost." Veltar looked at the human officers. "What happens now? Will you stay and help us rebuild?" Chen shook her head. "That's not what humans do. We don't rebuild civilizations. We give people the tools to rebuild themselves." She gestured to Dr. Park, who handed Thylon a small data crystal. "Everything we know about fighting the hierarchy is on that crystal. Their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. Share it with other species. Spread the knowledge." "Why are you giving this to us?" Kesari asked. "This information must be incredibly valuable." "Knowledge is only valuable if it's used," Santos said. "What good does it do us to keep it secret? The more species that know how to fight the hierarchy, the safer the galaxy becomes." "But what do you want in return?" Veltar asked. There must be a price. Chen smiled. But this time it was not the predator smile. This time it looked almost sad. The price was paid a long time ago, Admiral. By every species the hierarchy destroyed before we learned how to stop them. She walked to the window and looked out at the wreckage. Every one of those dead ships represents lives lost, worlds burned, civilizations extinguished. We can't bring them back, but we can make sure their deaths meant something. By teaching others to fight, Thylon said. By teaching others to survive, Chen corrected. Fighting is just one tool. Diplomacy is another. Trade, alliance, mutual cooperation. Humans use every tool available. Even fear? Veltar asked. Chen looked at him directly. Especially fear. Admiral, your people were afraid of humans. That fear saved your lives. If you had tried to fight the hierarchy alone, you would have died. But your fear made you desperate enough to try something impossible. Santos checked her equipment and weapons. Captain, we should get back to patrol. The Defiance is needed elsewhere. Chen nodded. Admiral Veltar, it has been an honor to fight alongside your people. Will we see you again? Veltar asked. Probably not, Chen said honestly. Humans don't stay in one place very long. We're always moving, always patrolling, always looking for the next threat. But you have our frequency now. If you ever face something you can't handle alone, call us, and you will come, if we can. That's what the galaxy's apex predators do. We hunt the things that hunt everyone else. As the humans prepared to leave, Thylon approached Captain Chen one last time. Captain, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. Are you happy? Living like this, always at war, always fighting? Chen thought about the question for a long moment. Happiness is a luxury, she said finally. But satisfaction? Purpose? Yes. I have those. Every species we save, every world we protect, every child who grows up free because we fought for them, that makes it worthwhile, even knowing that the war will never end, especially knowing that. War doesn't end, Admiral. It just changes shape. But as long as there are humans in the galaxy, it won't be a war that innocents have to fight alone. The humans transported back to their ship. A few minutes later, the Defiance began moving toward the edge of the system. Where are they going? Kesari asked. Veltar checked the long-range sensors. Back to their patrol route. Back to hunting the things that hunt us. As they watched, the human ship jumped to hyperspace and vanished. But before it left, it transmitted one final message. It was a set of coordinates and a simple text. Terran Defense Force Emergency Frequency. For future reference. Veltar saved the coordinates in his personal files. Then he turned to address his crew. Begin recovery operations. Contact the other colonies. Tell them the swarm is destroyed and it is safe to return home. What about the human's gift? Thylon asked, holding up the data crystal. Copy it, Veltar said. Send copies to every species we have diplomatic contact with. The humans were right. Knowledge is only valuable if it's shared. And what do we tell our people about what happened here? Veltar looked out at the stars where the human ship had disappeared. We tell them the truth. We were cornered and desperate, so we summoned the one thing the galaxy feared most, and we learned that sometimes the most dangerous ally is exactly what you need. Will they believe us? They will when the next species calls for help and we answer. The humans taught us something important today. Fear is a tool. But it's not the only tool. Sometimes the thing you fear most becomes the thing that saves you. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. The tale of a dying species that summoned humanity and lived to tell about it. But more importantly, the knowledge spread too. Species that had never heard of the hierarchy learned how to fight them. Worlds that had been defenseless suddenly had weapons that worked. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, human ships continued their eternal patrol, hunting the hunters, protecting those who could not protect themselves, being the thing that monsters feared most. The galaxy was a dangerous place. But as long as humans walked among the stars, it was not a place where evil could hunt unopposed. The Zephyrians had summoned their salvation. What they had not expected was that their salvation would teach them to save others. That, Admiral Veltar realized, was the most human thing of all.